Hello, North Haveners. Welcome to North Haven Voices, this week's edition. I'm Diane Merrell, and I'm a part of the Connect team, and it is my great pleasure to interview Julie Reeves this week. Julie's been a longtime member of North Haven and is vital to North Haven's ministry and our church. And she currently is chair of SPRC, staff parish, and also is part of the Guru team that has enabled us to be able to still gather together on Sundays and have our Sunday church services. So it is really a pleasure to have you here and to have you with us. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so here's where we're going to start. First, for those people that don't know you, which I doubt there are very many, but just in case, why don't you give us a brief background of you, where you were born and raised, school? I think I can figure that out by your attire, career path, that kind of stuff, where you live, that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Texarkana, East Texas, an only child and a cradle Methodist of a capital DEVOUT Methodist mother and a Southern Baptist turned Methodist later in his life father. I often share that my mom had me at the church at the time the church doors opened, until the time the church doors closed, at which time I had to walk around the church and make sure all the doors were locked and the lights were off.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And for all the times in between, she had a key. So I went to college at SMU, obviously. I earned a BA in criminal justice and a BS in political science, and decided toward the end of my 4 years that I didn't want to go to law school. So I returned and got my MBA at SMU. And then I kind of fell into computer work. It was a rough time in the Dallas area. The S&L crisis had happened. Jobs were hugely scarce in Dallas. I'd be embarrassed to tell you after 3 degrees at SMU what I made in my first salary. But anyway, that aside, I fell into IT because of a friend of mine, one of my college roommates' brother, offered me a job to teach people how to use computers. And I told him, I said, well, the only problem I have is that I've never used a computer. Now, this is before the personal computer came out, right? It was just on the fringe of the personal computing coming out. But the market had a plethora of smaller systems for smaller businesses. So he brought me on board to teach people how to use computers, and I installed accounting systems, which was absolutely my worst class in my MBA. But once I started doing accounting systems and installing them, I really understood what debits and credits and windows and doors and all that stuff meant. So I started my career off kind of rather haphazardly. Took a job in consulting with KPMG. Spent most of my career in consulting, one form or fashion. I say I got my first real job in 1995. I went to work for Frito-Lay, which is where I met my life partner. And that was probably my favorite job of all the jobs I've had throughout my career. Spent a number of years at EDS HP, and then in 2015 decided to go out on my own. I formed my own LLC and have no intentions of working for anybody except myself for however many days I intend to work.
Right.
So that's kind of my career.
That's amazing. That's great. The fact that your first job was teaching people how to use computers. I wish I would have known you back then. I could sure use a course in that.
I might be better off teaching you now than I would have been at that time. So
Frito-Lay was your favorite job?
It was my favorite job. I say that it was my only job, really, where I wish I had a bag of chips or something, where you could go into a store or be out in the community somewhere and you'd say, that's my company right there, because in consulting, you don't really have an anchor. You're
Yeah,
just, you know, spending time at different companies doing projects as they come and go.
that's
So
that's
it really
cool.
was my favorite job.
That's cool. Well, it makes sense now how why you're so on top of everything, as far as being the guru, part of the guru team and staff parish. It all makes sense now.
Uh-oh.
You're
Uh-oh.
yeah, you're that's great. That's impressive. So glad you told me that story. Um, so how did you end up at North Haven? When, and how long, and what? How did that happen?
Yeah, I visited North Haven in the 1990s with Cindy Wascom and Sandy Long, who are two of
Yeah,
my dearest
yeah.
friends. And I was not a regular at North Haven, but I would attend on, you know, Easter, Christmas, whatever it might be, kind of come and go. And then toward the mid to the late 1990s, got a little bit more serious about becoming involved in church again.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined on an Easter Sunday toward the end of that decade. John Thornburg was the preacher at the time. And I've been a member ever since. And I can't imagine, other than my hometown church, which I'll talk about later maybe, but other than that little church in Texarkana, I can't imagine being a member of any other church for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So you've seen quite a bit of changes here.
Yep.
In Dallas and
Yep.
in the country at North Haven. Do you have any
Right.
memories from back in the day? Any favorite memories from?
Oh, I have a lot of memories of the old building. For the people who were never in the old building.
Yeah, I wasn't. I never knew the old
Yeah,
building.
it was interesting. I spent some time this week going back and reading on the Shoulders of Giants, you know, our history that was done
That's such a great
in
book.
2011, I think, and looking through some of the old pictures of the old building. It was put together in an interesting way, and you know, I have lots of memories of the sanctuary, because my memory of the sanctuary was the biggest thing in the sanctuary was the organ. In fact, it pretty much was the sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
The sanctuary was really just kind of a rectangle room, and that you could kind of move around, not unlike what we do in our sanctuary today. Obviously, the organ didn't move, but it was at the south end of the building. I got that.
Okay.
And I think one of my fondest memories of the old building was the Easter Sunday I joined. Cindy and Sandy coerced me into going and singing with the Hallelujah chorus with the choir at the end of Easter Sunday. So that was pretty awesome. It was amazing, the sound in the room of that small little building compared to where we are today, and how powerful it was even back when we were in that smaller space.
Yeah, I'm sure. The things I've heard about the old sanctuary is, you know, it was cozy. It was that may be a generous word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt really special.
Yeah, it was very special.
Yeah,
was very special.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's interesting. I didn't know the older building, so I love hearing people's memories about that, because it's just, I don't know, it's a touchstone, I guess, of our history. And mentioning the book On the Shoulders of Giants, what a great read. And as an aside to anyone who's listening to this, if you haven't read it, it's a really great history of our church, and
very rich.
It is. I go back and reread it every once in a while. It's great. Yeah. Okay, so one more serious question, then we'll move on to the fun stuff. So would you be willing to give us a kind of a peek inside your spiritual journey? Like, you know, is there a Bible study or a time in your life, or a Bible story, or something that kind of stands out to you as part, or a turning point maybe, or a part of your spiritual journey that's really important to you?
Well, I will go back to my upbringing in Texarkana and a very small Methodist church in Texarkana called St. Luke's United Methodist Church. It was the centrifugal force of my life. You know, my mom's commitment to that church was remarkable, and I kind of, as an only child, sort of had to go along. It wasn't like I
Yeah,
had anywhere else to be or anybody else to look after me, right? Our
right.
lives pretty much rotated around that church, and um, I still cherish that church family today, and I always will. I mean, Sunday school, MYF, vacation Bible schools, you know, fellowship suppers. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
I, you know, the foundation that my mom and my dad and St. Luke's poured for me and grounded me on was as strong as granite. It was very solid. But you know, like most young people, I came to the big city and went to college and drifted away from the church. I
sure.
never drifted away from God, excuse me, God or my faith, but I did drift away from going to church.
Yeah,
And I think that being someone that was born and raised in the church like I was, who, you know, as a tiny little girl, I think I was 6 or 7 years old, I recited the whole Christmas story by memory, you know,
oh, I love
and for
that.
Christmas Eve service, you know. I still
Uh,
I had a teacher of mine in third grade that passed away just a couple of years ago, and up until, you know, the last time I saw her, she would still talk about that. So you know, church was just in my DNA.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I have many favorite. Being that I'm not new to religion, I have many favorite stories. But I think I always carry a special affinity to the story of Ruth.
uh,
Um, you know, Ruth to me speaks that God's love and care is for all people. You know,
right,
regardless of race or status or color or country of origin, you
right.
know, and there are no unimportant people to God. You know, there's lots of little things in our lives, many of them tragic, that weave together to put us on a path to
Mhm.
experience and live out God's greatness.
Right.
So if I had to pick one thing, which you're asking me to do, I think it would be the story of Ruth.
That's really beautiful. And I agree with you. That story is, yeah, it's pretty, now I was raised Baptist, so it's
No,
quite
okay.
a little bit different here, but
Well, if we had more time, I could tell you a couple of funny Baptist stories with my father. So we'll save that
we'll
to
do
the
that
end.
another time.
Yeah,
Everybody
we'll
stay
save that.
tuned. That's
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
Round two.
I will intrigue everybody by saying I was like 7 years old and I made the newspaper. So I'll just intrigue people with that.
Oh, okay, now that's not right. You cannot stop there. You have to finish that.
Okay. Well, being that we were a small Methodist church, we had a baptismal font, and I'd never seen an immersion, right? And so my
Right.
father worked a lot, and he would go to his Baptist church and then go to work or come home for lunch. He'd go to work downtown on Sundays. The Baptist church was walking distance. He'd go to church. He had a gorgeous voice. Would sing in the choir. Come home for lunch. Go back to work. He was a CPA, building a practice, you know, and obviously still at a relatively young age. So one Sunday, there was a bit of tug of war between my parents on the Methodist Baptist thing. I won't share all that laundry, but one Sunday night he took me to the Baptist church, and the Baptist church was humongous.
Yeah.
Now, if you saw it today, you'd say that's not that big, but it was humongous to me,
Right.
right?
Sure.
And they had a balcony, and so I guess my dad agreed that we could go sit in the balcony, and there was a railing, of course, and I was standing. I was probably, as I still am, too short to see over it, so I was standing, looking at the railing. Well, there was a baptism that night, and I, you know, they had a bad. I don't pardon. You can help me here with it since you were raised that way. But what do you call it? The baptismal immersion area.
Yeah. Yeah.
That place behind the pulpit, right?
Right.
And I kind of thought it was a swimming pool.
Right. That's,
It
yeah.
seemed that big to me as a child. So anyway, some time passed, and I went home and a couple of days maybe passed, and I was telling my mom this story, and my dad was just sitting at the dinner table listening. And I said, Mom, I just think that we can't afford a swimming pool at our church. We have to use a cup. So
I love that.
So that and my father taking me at a young age to the pastor of then St. Luke's, because I would, in my mind, I would hear that the giving of your tithes and offerings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we went home from church that day, Mom and I, and my dad decided after lunch to purge his closet, and he was getting rid of ties and suits and stuff, refreshing his wardrobe. And I said, Dad, you can't give away those ties. You have to give them to the church. So he promptly took me to the St. Luke's pastor's house, and where he said that, of course I wasn't embarrassed. I had no idea what I was talking about, but we gave the pastor all of my dad's old ties. So anyway, I guess I thought I gave it to the church.
I bet you had quite the reputation around town.
Yeah. We won't go there.
Oh, we all have days like that, memories like that. Okay, let's switch gears. What is, Julie, I think of you as such a positive and such a strong woman, and I admire you so much, and really would like to know you better, which is why I asked to interview you.
Thank you.
I'm curious, what brings you joy? What just brings you joy? Where are you the happiest?
Yeah. Well, I am a joyful person. I don't wallow in misery or think my glass is half full, or whatever that saying is. So I think the first thing that came to mind when you asked that is anything outdoors. I love nature. I love outdoors, whether it's digging in the dirt and planting, or going to my grandfather's farm when I was a little child and seeing crops grow.
Mm-hmm.
I love the outdoors. My mom, obviously, this is probably a no-brainer. I was a Girl Scout, and of course, she was the troop leader for 12 years. And so
I see a trend.
So hiking and enjoying nature and enjoying the outdoors is a real big part of me. I actually love the mountains. I had the opportunity.
At your space.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to live in the Denver area in the late 80s, early 90s, and I transferred there as part of my job. And I had my family been closer to me, or had I not been as close to my family, I guess you could say, I would have probably not come back to Dallas. And I like the beach, but I love the mountains. And
it seems like people are either, beach or mountain type.
Right.
Love both, but one calls to them more than the other. The mountains.
Right. But if I had to tell you one place that brings me exhale, it's the what was once a Girl Scout camp where I grew up, in a little bitty town in Arkansas, Mena, Arkansas. It's no longer part of the Girl Scouting program, but some very smart people took ownership back, and now it's a camp that provides camping for families, boys, girls, youth, adults, family reunions. And Camp High Point is probably the place, when I drive into it and I park my car and I get out of the car, that's my place.
Yeah.
Especially hiking through the woods, and to a little place we called Inspiration Point, which was a slate rock that is a slate rock that sits above the creek that runs through the camp. And I'm fortunate that every couple of years there's actually a 75th reunion coming up in the spring. Whether or not we can go to it remains to be seen, but I'm fortunate to be able to go back there every couple of years and connect with friends and people and just exhale.
Your roots run very deep to that area and that time and that place, which is really cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Was your mom and dad, were they both from Texarkana?
My mom they were both from Arkansas. My mom was from a little bitty town called Foreman, Arkansas, about 40 miles from Texarkana. And my dad was from Camden, Arkansas. And they both went to the University of Arkansas and met there and married in 1950.
Wow. Wow. That's cool. That's cool. Okay. So a hobby.
A hobby?
Let's do that rapid fire thing. A hobby.
A hobby.
Hiking?
Hiking is great. I about 2 years ago, 2.5 years before COVID, I fell in love with pickleball. You know, I call it the old person's tennis. And as soon as I am able to get back on the pickleball court, I will be there. It does require the use of both hands. So I have some healing to do to be able to get back there, but hopefully in the spring. You know, I love golfing. I'm not able to do as much golfing as I used to in the past. So pickleball kind of took over the place of golf. I love exercise of any kind, especially if I can do it outdoors.
Right. That's your happy place too, right?
Yeah.
Just being active and being outside.
Yeah. Just got to move. Pound the pavement. Pound the pavement.
Right. Pound the pavement. Oh, yeah, no, not me. I wish that was. Okay, let's see. Let me check my list. Oh, I know one thing I was going to ask you. Tell me one thing that people probably don't know about you that might surprise you. A hidden talent, a past, I don't know. You lived in Argentina and spoke only Spanish. I don't know. Something that people might not know about you.
Well, people might not know that as a high school student, I became involved in the American Legion Auxiliary program called Girl State. It's pretty big in Texas. It's Boy State and Girl State. Juniors in high school are selected to attend in the summer before their senior year. And it's a program, you know, that teaches young people a lot more about our democracy and about our political system. And it's a wonderful program that I attended as a 2B senior in high school and was fortunate enough to be invited back for a counselor for several years. In fact, 2 years ago, we went back for a big reunion and got to see people I hadn't seen in 30 years.
That's cool.
But when I attended Girls State, I of course I'd had government classes like every kid in high school had, but I didn't really dive into it that much. And I ran. You run for office at Girls State. You're divided into cities and counties.
Oh, cool.
Or you can run for state offices like governor. I ran for lieutenant governor, and I lost I made it to the final, but lost and was appointed Secretary of State. And it's a make-believe nation, but it operates very much like the goodness in our democracy.
Right.
Or is intended to operate. And there, from there, I went to SMU, and as I said, I was a criminal justice political science major, and I decided at one point that one of the speakers I'd heard at Girls State was Barbara Jordan, and I decided that I wanted to go to graduate school at LBJ's School of Public Affairs. And so I had a dean at SMU that took a liking to me, and she knew Dean Elspeth Rostow at the LBJ school, and I was accepted, and then a few months later decided I didn't want to go. And that's a story for another time, but I will say I'll always regret not being a student of Barbara Jordan, but I will never regret not going into politics.
Right. Sure. Of course. Well, it has been great talking to you. I just thank you so much for sharing your rich history and all all your stories. They're so wonderful, and we need to pick this back up offline.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that.
Come back again, and we'll continue on. But thank you, Julie. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do for North Haven.
Thank you and
even
all of us.
Even people that don't realize it, everyone who watches church on Sunday is able to view it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to be a part of this family.
Yeah. Take care.
Take care.